Gabrielle Union, welcome to the Daily Social Distancing Show.
Thank you for having me.
It's quite a time to have you on the show because everyone in America is having conversations now. Everyone in America is having conversations that they've either been avoiding, they've either been ignoring, or they just didn't have the time to have. But because of coronavirus, everyone is having these conversations in and around race. And I feel like you're one of the people who was having some of these conversations before they were quote unquote cool. Talk me through what you're experiencing right now.
Uh, it's been, honestly, it's just one big anxiety attack between the global pandemic that the world is experiencing and waking up every day to the brutalization, the murder of Black bodies. It's daily. The nonstop onslaught of trauma is, I don't even know if anxiety is a big enough word. I don't know if depression is a big enough word to encompass all of what this all feels like. It just feels like terror in my body. And you try to figure out how best you can cope and then help.
Conversations are being had that I didn't even think people would be having for maybe 5 years or even 10 years. Yes, it started with George Floyd. That protest sparked everything. And then Breonna Taylor and all of these bodies, as you talk about. And then it became not just about the Black people who've lost their lives, but Black people who still are living their lives. Then it evolved from the police to, I think, people genuinely then starting to have conversations about just the environments that inherently are a byproduct of systemic racism, and people struggle to understand. I know a lot of white people who've genuinely said, I don't understand it. And I've said, because you can't see a thing when the thing is not affecting you. We've seen this in institutions everywhere. We've seen this all over America. And you were one of the faces that people first associated with these stories where they went, wow, I know that working in a company, I might have an issue being Black, and someone might say that me standing up for myself is me being aggressive or me being hyper this or being violent when I wasn't. You became one of those faces in the entertainment industry. People were shocked. They said, Gabrielle Union, you have it great, don't you? And yet, very quickly we realized that everyone can experience this in a different way in varying levels.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the New York Times did an article the other day about when Amy Cooper and Christian Cooper's lives sort of converged. And the fact that the Amy Cooper Central Park situation happened on the same day as George Floyd lost his life. And you realize how far anti-Blackness and the weaponization of whiteness, how far it can go. We saw what happened in that park that day. Amy Cooper did not believe that the rules and laws applied to her. And she believed that in her wrongness, she would be able to weaponize the police against a Black man. She just happened to choose the wrong Black man. And in that same vein, you see how anti-Blackness and profiling led to George Floyd's death. So along this spectrum, we all live within this spectrum, right? So with AGT, trying to work within a system of, I thought it was the easiest show. How hard is it to, juggle, watch jugglers? That's what I thought I signed up for. Day one, Simon Cowell is smoking cigarettes inside. I've worked a long time. I've worked with all kinds of people. I've never experienced that. So when your boss, the person who has the ability to determine who gets opportunities and who doesn't believe that the law applies to him or the rules apply to him, and he does it in full view of NBC and Fremantle and Psycho, and no one cares about Simon Cowell, exposing all of these employees to secondhand smoke. That's day one. That's within the first hour. Mm-hmm. What message do you think that sends to anyone that has an issue with the very real racism and the lack of accountability? And it goes on and on and on. I decided to participate in this investigation that they were like, we're going to commission this independent investigation. Well, silly me. I thought independent was like independent. But when NBC and Fremantle and Psycho pay for that investigation, they control it. So throughout that investigation that I participated in, I talked about, being in there for 5.5 hours, and my goal is change. I'm about labor, treating employees fairly. Nobody's asking for anything special. Nobody's asking for somebody to separate their Skittles or their, M&Ms or whatever. Just treat people fairly. Have mechanisms in place for when things happen, there are consequences. And participated in this investigation, and the investigation was ongoing. They turn over what they believe to be inflammatory things or things that are not advantageous to me over to the head of NBC, Paul Teleghi, who then uses those things that he thinks are smoking guns to like shoot down my claims. He then threatens my agent. Gabrielle better watch who she calls a racist in the middle of an investigation about racism and discrimination. This is what's happening from the top of the company. So as we're all wanting to be part of the solution, as we're all wanting change, we have to hold the people at the very top accountable.
Let me ask you this question. What do you think the industry could be doing better to help Black people? And I mean, on all levels, everyone from, working in the crew all the way through to what we see on the screen.
We have been so committed as an industry. I mean, and every industry is facing the same thing with going along to get along, trying to figure out how you work around the bad apples as opposed to addressing and making those bad apples accountable and there being real consequences. So in front of and behind the camera. So there has to be an increase in representation across the board, who from the top to the bottom, who gets to make the decisions of which projects to greenlight, who is a part of those development process, who gets to determine budgets, who gets to determine who gets opportunities and why, how have you actually empowered HR? HR has become synonymous with like how internal affairs is looked at on cop shows.
Right.
Those are the bad guys, but those are actually supposed to be the departments that hold people accountable. We have to be able to be okay with change that doesn't always benefit us. Some people believe that leadership, the only way to lead is to center yourself in every argument. What I'm learning throughout this whole process is sometimes the best way to lead is to get out of the way and make room for someone else.
Mm-hmm.
You have to dismantle the whole thing. It's you can't put a Band-Aid on a gunshot. You can't.
Gabrielle Union, thank you so much for joining me on the show. Hopefully next time we'll be chatting about how many things moved forward and we'll get to laugh a lot more. I appreciate you.
No, thank you so much, Trevor.
Say hi to the family for me.